Center of Polish Academy of Sciences. Today, I'm going to talk about pulsating subdwarf B stars and their astroseismic analysis using the TESS data. So first of all, what are pulsating subdwarf B stars? The subdwarf stars are the evolved stars which exist at the extreme horizontal end of the uh, um, uh, extreme horizontal branch stars, which is extreme blue end of the horizontal branch, which we can see here in the HR diagram. And these are the compact stars with helium core burning, and above the core there is a helium shell, and above that there is a very thin in mass hydrogen envelope. Talking about the size, the size is around 0.15 to 0.35 solar radius with a mass of nearly half of the solar mass. And the temperature, these are hot stars with the temperature range varies from 20,000 to 40,000. So talking to the evolutionary process, after this HDV phase, they directly go toward the white dwarf cooling track, not following the actual track of stellar evolution. And observationally, it is found that around 10% of the HDV stars are pulsating, which opens a new window to to analyze the interior of these stars by doing the astroseismology. So why we need to study HDBVs? First of all, there is a very a small number of stars, variable HDB stars are known till date, and so the first thing is to make a bigger sample size for better analysis. The evolutionary process of HDBs are still quite not known, and we need a better evolutionary or pulsation models for this purpose. As we know, HDB stars are pulsate in two modes, either in the gravity mode or the pressure mode. But from the ground-based observations, it's quite difficult to get gravity modes pulsations in the light curve. And in this case, the space missions like Kepler, K2, and TESS are very useful and provided a lot of targets with gravity modes. For the TESS mission with the HDB stars, there is the task group is there which works with the TESS short cadence data in group 8.3. So coming to the HDBVs, only hundreds of HDBVs were known before the TESS mission, but within the 2 years of TESS missions data, we have more than 200 pulsating HDBs, out of which more than 50 are reach gravity modes. I have shown a few reach gravity modes short cadence data on the right, out of which few are already published. And my talk is divided into two parts of the analysis of these pulsations. The first part, I will talk about the short cadence data, which is, and in the second part, I will come to the long cadence data analysis that our group done by analyzing the FFIs of TESS. So coming to the first part, I will talk about these three targets what we published in the paper with the collaboration with task community, and I'm only going to talk about the astroseismic part or the mode geometry part from this paper. Before coming to our results, what we mean by determining the mode geometry of a star. As we know, the oscillating stars oscillate either in the radial, you do the radial oscillations or the or the non-radial oscillations. And to define these oscillations, we define them by the spherical harmonic parameters, where the radial oscillation is defined by the radial order n, while all other non-radial oscillations like the oscillations on surface features which are defined by the modal degree L. And due to the rotation of the star, we get some factor of modal degree in the azimuthal direction, and we define them as azimuthal order. After getting the pulsation peaks from the TACE or from a satellite from a, time series observations, we need to define these parameters for for the determination of the oscillation geometry of the star. So how we do that? We do in normally two methods we use for this purpose. The first one is called the rotational multiplets, which where we use the multiplet splitting due to the rotation of the star, as I mentioned here. Like if a star is rotating, the splitting will depend upon its modal degree on the frequency peak. So let's say if the modal degree is 1, so due to the rotation of the star, it will split into 3, which is called the triplets. Similarly, for L equal to 2, it will be split it into 5 parts, into the 5 peaks. So by directly seeing these peaks splitting in the frequency spectra, we can say that these are what is the modal degree of these, and we can also define the azimuthal order. And also from this method, we can, if we know the splitting from the frequency spectra, we can directly calculate the rotation speed of the star as well. But what if we don't have we don't see any splitting in the frequency spectra? So we use the another method, which is called the asymptotic period spacing method, in which we convert the frequency spectra to into the period space. And for an asymptotic range where the n value will be very large than L, for a specific modal degree L, the consecutive radial order will be nearly evenly spaced, and which we can also prove from this equation by putting two consecutive n values and differentiating them. We will get a constant value. Um, so observationally, we found for L equal to 1, this period spacing is nearly equal to 250 always. And for L equal to 2 is 145. And for the higher orders, we can also calculate from this equation. So for our 3 targets, what we published from the short cadence data, we don't have any multiplet splitting, and the only way to analyze the to identify the modes is from this asymptotic period spacing. So coming to the results of our targets, I have plotted here the amplitude spectra for 3 of the targets, which are and we assign the L values or the modal degrees to each peaks, which have a spacing for let's say L equal to 1. The period spacing always is nearly equal to 250, and for L equal to 2 is nearly equal to 145. So for a few of the targets, let's say we can see here, this peak is satisfying both the sequences of L equal to 1 and L equal to 2. So we assign them either L equal to 1, 2, which maybe in future modeling we can surely say which mode is this. For the targets SB815 and PZ0342, we identify the modes in the same way, but we found a few peaks which doesn't satisfy either L equal to 1 or 2 sequences. And the amplitude of these peaks is relatively high, and that's why from the surface cancellation effect we know it's less likely that these peaks will be higher orders. So we identify them as trap modes, as the candidate trap modes, and for SB815 we found 3 such peaks which we put as candidate trap modes, and for PG0342 we have we have 2 peaks which we put as candidate trap modes. After assigning the modal degree, we calculated the average period spacing for all 3 targets, and also for the quadruple modes, and we found all are near to the 250 for dipole and 145 for quadruple, which we found from the literature and previous observations as well. So it seems our mode ID, we have a pretty good mode identification of these peaks. So we try to analyze this trap modes in a more better way uh, by putting in the reduced period diagram. In this diagram, we normally scale both dipole and quadrupole sequences by a root of ln 12 plus 1. So both the sequences will overlap with each other, which we can see here. And also, if we have trap modes both in L equal to 1 and other modes, those will also create, will overlap. But unfortunately, we don't have any trap modes for L equal to 2 sequence, and we can't be sure that what we found are real trap modes unless we do the modeling for these targets. Um, but from literature, we found in the reduced period diagram, normally the gaps found to be 2000 seconds in the trap modes. And we also found the similar gappings, which may give a hint of this might be the trap modes. Um, then we produce the evolutionary models and put our targets along with all known SDBVs previously, which we collected from Holsworth 2017 paper. And we collected the effective temperature and log G parameters and plotted with our data. As we can see for the large effective temperature and log G, all the P modes are here, P mode pulsators are here, and the lower end, the G modes, and in between the hybrid, which is similar, and our three targets are here with the error bar. And we can clearly see this SB459 and PG0342 are the G mode pulsators in the grouping in the G mode group. And from tests, we found both G mode peaks and P mode peaks for SB815. And it also, from the temperature and log G diagram, it's grouping in the hybrid. And apart from the spectroscopic information, we plotted the evolutionary tracks prepared by Jakub Ostrowski 2001 paper. Where we plotted different evolutionary tracks with a range of envelope masses from 0.0006 to 0.005. For the target PG0342, we can see this is early phase of SDB with an envelope mass ranges from 0.001 to 0.003. SB459 is more towards the mid phase of SDB and with an envelope mass of 0.002, and SB815 is much evolved SDB phase with an envelope mass of 0.001. And now coming to the second phase of my talk, where we try to do a survey to find more new pulsating subdwarf stars by analyzing the light curve from TESS-FFI. So for this purpose, we, as an input, we took the candidate SDB catalog, which is the most updated catalog published by Gaia 2019 and 2020, which consists of more than 45,000 stars. And they limit, they use all the Gaia stars and the Gaia color index, and limit the hot subluminous stars by using the filtering from minus 0.7 to 0.7, the color index, and which we can see in this plot. But unfortunately, in this catalog, most of them are not spectroscopically classified. And out of 45,000, we have only 7,400, which is classified as SDB in this list. But we took all the targets and excluded only the targets which already have short cadence data or will be observed in short cadence, and or the targets is outside the field of view of TESS. So we just excluded those and extracted the light curves of all other around 25,446 targets by using some publicly available Python tools like LNR and Lightcurve packages. After the extraction of these light curves, we calculated the amplitude spectra and manually inspect each of the light curve and amplitude spectrum to see if we find any variability in the star. By doing this survey, we found around 1807 stars in the southern ecliptic hemisphere and 506 stars in the northern ecliptic hemisphere to be variable. And but as we know, there are only a few number of stars which are already which have classified as SDB spectroscopically, out of which only we found 2 targets in the south and 13 in north, which shows pulses and peaks in the G mode range. And from the south, we can see in this image the peaks which are not correlated to each other and have in the G mode range. So we define the condition for to assign few targets as candidate SDBV or SDV, which have the spectral classification as SD or SDB, and then if they have at least one peak or more than one uncorrelated peaks within the G mode range, then we categorize them as SDBV or SDB. And so I have mentioned few some targets from north, which we categorized as SDBV because all these targets are spectroscopically classified as SDB, and these are as SD. And we see either one or more than one which are not correlated to each other peaks in between the G mode range, and we define them as SDBV. And apart from the pulsators or the SDBVs, we found a few targets which shows the binarity variability from the SDB and SD list we found. Now coming to the next part, where most of the targets are not identified, spectroscopically not classified. By analyzing those targets, we found around 83 in south and 30 in north, which shows clear pulses and peaks. As we can see here, I have plotted 10 from south and 10 from north, and we can see clear pulses and peaks in the G mode range of SDB. And taking into account that the selection process of this candidate SDBs by Geyer 2019 and 20 paper, these targets are less likely, less possible to be any cool main sequence pulsators. So this would be more probable that this would turn out to be sub-dwarf stars. But still, we need a spectral classification of all these 113 targets before confirming to confirm these as SDBVs. So a bit of advertisement, because apart from these pulsators, SDB pulsators, we found a lot, around 483 eclipsing binaries and other kind of binaries. I'm not going to talk in detail about these targets, this type of variable stars we found. If someone is interested, please look into the papers, to this paper. So coming back to the FFI targets and the candidate possible G mode stars we found with a rich pulses and peaks, out of which we selected few of them which have really really rich G mode peaks, and try to do the mode identification the same way we did for the short cadence data. And if these targets will turn out to be SDB, we already have the mode geometry determination of these targets. Coming to the first target of Gaia DR25233, this target shows clear multiplets, and from which it is easier to identify the modes. And by using both the technique, we identify the modes of the first one, and from the multiplets we found the rotation speed of rotation period of around 5.238 for this target. For other four, which we only use the asymptotic period spacing technique, and most of the peaks turn out to be the dipole modes here, and only a very few we found with L equal to 2. And after the mode geometry determination, we calculated the average period spacing, and all of them are close to 250 as expected. um, so coming to the summary of my talk, so we have analyzed more than 30 reads Gmode HDBVs from the short cadence data, and 3 of them are already published, and few more we have the analysis is still going on, and we are planning for a manuscript. And in the FFI survey, we found more than 2,300 variable stars, and out of which 25 are SDB or SD classified, spectroscopically classified, and shows pulses and peaks in the G mode, and around 113 shows clear pulses and peaks, but we need to do the spectral classifications for these targets. And apart from the pulsators, we have a lot of binaries also. So I will stop here. Thanks for your attention. Sorry, so Roberto, I guess I can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Robert.
Can you now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Lovely.
So thanks for your talk. Are there any questions? Okay, there are a couple of questions. So there is one that says from Sayali Kulkarni, what do you think the error bars in the PNG modes are coming from?
Which error bar?
Maybe Sayali can comment.
The image where you talked about PNG modes and hybrid mode.
I
Perhaps
see.
I missed it.
So for all these 3 targets, we observed. So we calculated from the spectroscopic observations the effective temperature and log J values, and they have the errors with them. There are errors for all other targets as well in the literature, but I haven't plotted in this plot for the targets I took from Holsworth paper. But for all 3 targets from the spectroscopic analysis, we calculated the errors, both in effective temperature and log G.
Okay, so what could be the possible reason according to you of these error bars? Possibly since it is purely spectroscopic. Yeah, spectroscopic. So yeah.
I guess it's from the, like, I'm not a spectroscopic guy. I guess for this paper, Roberto and
Yeah, I can
Lenny,
comment on this. I think these are just the errors on the spectroscopic fit.
Yeah, it's from fitting with the models, right? You will get
Yeah.
the errors. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean possibly any astrophysical processes involved in it, like extinction parameter or something like that.
Yeah, they come from the fitting procedure, and so they are related to their observational uncertainties coming from the analysis of the spectra, right? So the noise in the spectra, and then taking into account the everything related to that. They are not related to the models. They come from using the models to fit the spectra. But I think we can move on to another question. There is a question from Frederick Hessman asking whether there are any binary SDBs.
Yes, there are few binary SDBs, and also we found a few SWVer and candidate SWVer systems. And I mentioned here in this image, I haven't put in the slides, but there are around 26 binaries, SDB binaries in south, and 40 in north, and 23 in which are classified as SD binaries are also in the north. So there are in total more than 89.
Okay, then we have a comment from Stefan, I guess Stefan Gayard, is saying that he's working on the EDR3 catalog of subdoors. So there will be about 60,000 plus targets.
Wow.
And we have another question, and then we move to the next talk. So a question from James Wild, saying that in the T-effective log-G-plot, there is a G-mode pulsator that looks way hotter and way denser than the rest of the G-mode stars. Is there some explanation as to how it got there? And I congratulate with the talk.
For
I think it's the point more to the left, I think. The hot,
okay, so the one, this one.
no, sorry, a G-mode pulsator. I mentioned a G-mode pulsator
Okay,
that's
so that
in the crowd of the P-mode pulsators.
this
The square there, yeah.
I'm not sure if my microphone works, but yeah, it's that one down at about like a TF of 35, and the one you're pointing at there.
Yes, I guess because all this data are taken from the Halsworth paper, and probably the effective temperature and log G were miscalculated for this star. I need to check because I don't have much information now, because I just plotted the data collected from this collecting from this paper, which is more than 119 SDBVs, I guess, in the list. So I don't, I don't know if this is any physical significance for this star to be here, or this is some calculation like wrong effective temperature and log G mentioned in the paper.
Okay, I think we can continue in the